Hello and welcome back to Vanar's Virtuous Voice. Today I'm here with Justin and Ray, and we're going to be talking about which virtue we would describe as the most important one to attain the good life. Today I have diligence, and I will be talking about diligence. Justin has courage, and he'll be talking about courage, and Ray has humility, and he'll be talking about humility.
Yep.
I'd just like to open up the floor a little bit and let you guys each have your own little chance to give me a little summary of what you guys believe your virtue is about.
So I believe humility is the most important virtue to attaining a good life because it's a foundation you can build your life up off of. This really good quote I got from On Reading Well was, it's not thinking of yourself as less, it's thinking about yourself less. So putting your thoughts onto other people instead of being full of yourself. Believing that you're worth something but not more than what you really are. It's grounding oneself. It's a great thing to build your life up off of, I believe.
That's an interesting point to bring up because I remember I was talking with Mr. Gibson. I think it was one of the last classes. I'm not sure which one it was exactly. And we were discussing about just like qualifications and stuff and the way you should view yourself. And Mr. Gibson was like, he was wanting to make sure to like bring up a point that it's like you don't want to be boastful of yourself, but you also don't want to like almost sell yourself short of the accomplishments that you've gained. I think it was somewhere in Romans. He was just kind of talking about like you want to be sober-minded when you like view yourself. So I feel like humility kind of ties into that. I don't know, when you brought it up, it just kind of reminded me of
I totally agree.
Mr. Gibson's claim. All right, Justin, what do you got?
Courage is essential because it's necessary to preserve good, and goodness in your life is necessary for you to live the good life, obviously. And other virtues might help you to, bring good, like justice and enforcing what is right and wrong. But courage is actually doing like the right stuff even when it gets hard. So like even when there's risks, you're still doing the right thing, and other virtues don't require the same risk that courage does.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere courage, the root word in Latin is having heart. So like courage is like being filled with the power of the heart in a way, like you have the heart to do something. So I can see where you're coming from totally with that point. You definitely need courage as like a willpower to complete a lot of the virtues.
Okay.
I just want to take a minute to talk about my virtue. I feel like diligence is important because it's something that like you use to build all the other virtues. I feel like if you're not diligent about what you're doing and paying attention to the things that you take pride in and the tasks that you accomplish, whether that's school or sports or whatever it is, I feel like you have to be like a diligent person to accomplish that. And I feel like I have a couple different quotes that I wanted to talk about. But first, I just feel like a little summary of what I feel like diligence means to me. I feel like diligence is crucial to attaining the good life. Without moderation of excess and neglecting other important areas of your life, you won't be able to correctly attain the good life. So I feel like it's an important virtue to make sure that you're cultivating correctly. Otherwise, you're just going to be missing a lot of the other things. Because I feel like you can't just like pick and choose your virtues. I feel like you have to be able to incorporate all of them together, and I feel like the foundation of that includes diligence. For one of my quotes that I found, it's on the bottom of page 180 and On Reading Well, it says, "Diligence is probably both the hardest and easiest virtue to cultivate. It's easy in the sense that it is inherently simple. Whatever it is you are doing, keep at it with care and attention, and then keep at it some more. Care can be faked when necessary, but the attention part can be so hard." I feel like that quote was just like a good summary of how diligence is often an overlooked virtue, because it's fairly simple being able to make sure that you're paying attention to the tasks that you're accomplishing and the time at hand that you take to do it. But I feel like it's still important because you have to be diligently paying attention to what you're doing to properly cultivate diligence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of like weightlifting. It's in a way like consistency. If you go and lift 2 or 3 times, you're not going to build muscle. But if you stay consistent in lifting every day, or if you stay diligent in cultivating these virtues, like becoming someone who's one with a good life, then it'll help you in the long run rather than a short term. I think that's why it's it's so easy and so hard because it's easy to just get up and do something one time, but it's hard to actually continue to be disciplined in your actions the whole life in a way.
And I feel like that ties into Justin's too, being able to properly, like, you have to be almost like courageous, to be able to keep that consistency.
Yeah, to be
I
able
feel
to fall and get
yeah,
up.
Yeah. You have to have the courage to stay consistent, and like diligence and I feel like courage play roles in one another, and they're like usefulness to actually be able to do it correctly.
Well, you might have stole my thunder with the connection there, but I have a question for you about diligence.
Yeah.
Do you think diligence is different than perseverance and discipline, or do you think it just is one and the same?
I think there is a difference between diligence and discipline. I feel like discipline plays a role in what diligence means, but I feel like diligence extends more than just staying disciplined to what you're doing. I feel like if you want to be properly diligent, you have to. Whoa, I almost just knocked over the table. I feel like if you want to be properly diligent, you have to have diligence, but I feel like it's a bigger umbrella term almost. Like there's more that goes into being diligent than just staying disciplined to what you do, because I feel like if you're not paying attention to like moderation and stuff, I feel like there's a bigger part of that plays a role in what diligence means. I feel like you have to have moderation and you have to be paying attention to all the areas of your life, and that includes being disciplined, but I feel like it's a bigger word.
What about
almost.
perseverance?
I feel like perseverance is important. I feel like that ties in with what you were saying before, like courage, because I feel like you have to have courage to attain perseverance. Like when it gets difficult, I feel like it's a term that you can use when life gets difficult and you're trying to like get the job done almost, like at the end of a difficult day, or like a long baseball practice or basketball practice, whatever you guys are doing, and you're like tired and you don't really want to lift, but you have to persevere through and stay focused on your task and get your lift done or whatever it is. Make sure you're eating right, getting your protein in. I feel like that's like the specifics of those terms.
Do you think a lot of people in today's society have the perseverance, have the discipline, but don't necessarily tie them together in diligence?
Yeah, I feel like it is easy to find yourself lacking in certain areas. I feel like people will definitely do that. They'll pick and choose the concepts or the areas in their life that they want to focus on, and those are the areas that I feel like you'll see a genuine like spark in them to get the job done themselves. But if they're just like doing their own thing and only paying attention to what they want to get done, then it's not gonna be fruitful for them. Like they're going to be neglecting their schoolwork or whatever it is if they're trying to get that done and not lifting.
Well, since we've been talking about how we think our different virtues are most essential to the good life, what do you think is like the good life? Like, what are some key parts of the good life?
I'd say the good life is definitely like fruitful. Like if you guys have ever seen like the fruit of the spirit, the tree of the fruit of the spirit, it's all these like virtues that are like heavenly or godly in a sense that like Jesus portrayed, that we're seen in the Bible as like quality, good like traits to pursue. Sorry. I think a good life is one that encompasses that with a relationship with God, because we're put on this earth to not only have a relationship with God, but to be active in it. And to be lacking in these virtues is to be lacking in our active relationship with God. So, in summarization, I think a good life is a good relationship with God.
Okay. I think that ties into my virtue a lot, because I see courage as like the defining factor of when things get hard, because you know how you said like having a relationship with God and like acting on it and doing good as Jesus would have done. Even when it gets hard and when your faith is pursued, you have to have courage in order to continue living that life where you have that good relationship with the Lord and you're doing those things.
It's not always easy to follow the Lord, is it? Sometimes it's a little bit of an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Like the world isn't always going to conform to the same patterns that you're going to have. Like that one Bible verse that's like, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be continually like changed by the renewing of your minds. It's like the world is not going to follow what God says, and we have to be like the ones that aren't staying like of this world, but thinking outwardly of like what God wants for our lives and what we need to be doing to further His kingdom and spread the gospel, which is like one of our biggest roles as Christians, in a sinful, fallen world,
Yeah, that actually ties into diligence, your point, because
Yeah.
like you have to remain consistent and set in your ways to develop your mind and of like God and of these virtues. So I feel like it's a really good connection between the two. And you can even tie in humility as like grounding oneself. You wouldn't want to think of yourself as above or already attaining these virtues, as rather someone who's pursuant of these virtues.
I like that. Being able to pursue the virtue.
And pursue a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Well, I had another quote from my book on the top of page 179 I'd like to share. Just a little bit more about mine. I don't know if this might spark something in you guys, but I just kind of wanted to share because I took the time to collect it, so I might as well use it, Top of page 179 says, diligence must also, like other virtues, represent a mean between an extreme of excess and an extreme of deficiency. It's easy to see how insufficient diligence is a vice, but an excess of effort is also a vice. Such excess could take various form. One might be a workaholic, and then it continues. But it's interesting how it's talking about how diligence or insufficient diligence can be a vice. And I took the time to figure out what like a vice is. A vice is like something that holds you back almost. It's like excessive effort is also a vice. So it's saying like things that can keep you from like the goals you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to accomplish a good life, but you have insufficient diligence, then that's going to hold you back from like what God wants for you or like attaining the good life. You're going to be held back from the good life if you can't maintain your diligence.
Could you even define vice as like a sin or like sin in general? Like sin.
Yeah,
it'll hold you back from.
Yeah,
like
not having moderation, like being a workaholic or whatever it is. That's
I mean,
definitely advice.
I think sin is a vice. I mean, like, because you were saying vices are, things that keep you from getting to your goals. Let's say your goal is a good relationship with the Lord. Sins are a vice. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel humility kind of ties into that because pride is widely understood as like one of the greatest sins.
I would say it's one of the greatest vices too.
Hubris or whatever.
Hmm?
Hubris, it's like the Greek term or something for it. We learned a lot about it in like English.
There you go.
Last year, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
Insightful.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be courageous to overcome your vices too. I feel like that would
for sure.
that would
Yeah.
work well.
Yeah.
You gotta be strong to be able to.
Yeah, everybody is
Keep
a
yourself
winner
from
when it's
sinning.
easy. Is when it's hard is when you find the real dogs, the ones that can really fight through their battles.
Oh yeah. What was that Bible verse? It was the one where it's like it doesn't mean anything to like love your neighbor if they're like nice to you or something.
Yes,
And then it was like
just learning this, yeah.
even tax collectors love people that like pay them back or
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
Or like even Gentiles will
If
like
someone wants to
say
sue
hi.
you for your tunic,
Yeah,
give them
yeah.
your shirt as well, or
Yeah.
what was it?
Like give them your coat as well
I
or
think
something
it's
like
in a
that.
way humility because like you're not thinking of yourself as less. You're just recognizing that you are human and you're not put on this world to be a great like worldly human. You're put on this world to be a great godly human, and the worldly treasures that we possess should not mean as much to us as the eternal treasures we'll forever possess after this life.
Yeah, I mean, to take the example you said, where, if someone tells you give them your tunic, then you also give them your shirt. I mean, that takes courage.
For sure.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
You can't just like, no person in their right mind is just gonna give up all they have just because someone asks. I mean,
Yeah.
love requires courage.
Yeah, you just stand in the face of adversity.
Yeah, and also judgment. I feel like people are gonna like look at you a little weird, if you're like,
Sure.
it's gonna be something that
Naked.
changes your life, Yeah, well, yeah, naked. I mean, that would be a little strange. Hopefully, we're not taking off our pants too. But,
Yeah.
I mean, it is something that people like should notice in you. Like if you're a Christian, your life should look different to a non-believer. From that perspective, people should be able to tell that there's something different about your life. And I feel like that's like one of the most important things about Christianity is like even the Bible says it's like like if you light a candle or something, you shouldn't put it under a basket. You should put it up on like a windowsill so that it can give light to the whole house.
Mountaintop.
I think it's the mountaintop.
No, it's like on the
I think
windowsill, and then it gives light to the
put it
whole
on like
house.
a table or something.
Yeah.
My example would be like putting it on the mountaintop so the whole world can see. Like if the light of your life in a way is God, you wouldn't want to hide your
Revelations
your love of
5:4.
God. You want to put it on a mountaintop so all can see.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
it's just like the point of your faith is it shouldn't
It's a
be
good take.
it shouldn't be like a private thing. And I was even talking about it.
You must have courage, and you must have courage in defending your faith and spreading your faith.
Being courageous with that.
Yeah.
And diligent in your discipline and
We're just all about the connections.
Yeah.
today,
Dude,
aren't
this
we?
is
I mean,
I like it.
I made a connection between the two of yours earlier. I mean, both of them seem like they take a lot of balance, you know, because with yours, you don't want to do too much work, but you don't want to do too little work, you know. You have to find the right amount, and then with humility, you don't want to be too prideful, but you also don't want to just beat yourself up all the time. You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah. It's a like proper ordering of.
Before we get
yourself
off
is
track,
like
I wanted to bring
chastity.
up Mr. Dills. I had like a lunch meeting with him, and I just want to bring up this example before we get too far off the conversation. I won't be able to go
What are you
back to it.
laughing at?
But we were over. We have like our lunch meetings on Fridays. I recommend you guys pull up, or anybody tuning in to the podcast should pull up to
Okay.
Mr. Dill's Friday lunch meeting. We've been talking about like you're a Christian, so what, or like what do you do now that you're a Christian, and the first thing that we kind of discussed was this last week. It's like a 3-week thing. Is like now that you're a Christian, what is like the first thing you should do? So we looked into the Bible, and we were looking through. We saw Acts, and we also went to Matthew, and it was like the first thing you do after you become a Christian is it should be like a public proclamation, almost like how you're when you first like accept Jesus into your heart. It's kind of like a private thing, and nobody really knows about it. But then the first thing you should be doing after you like become a Christian is you should get baptized, you know, because it's like a public proclamation of your faith. It should be a public
I
thing
never
that's
thought
done
about it like that.
among other people.
That's well put.
Speaking on that, do you guys remember the shepherds in the Old/New Testament with Jesus' birth in Bethlehem?
Mhm.
The shepherds go to speak to the angels, and they go out and they spread the word in Bethlehem that our Savior has come, the Messiah has been born in Bethlehem. Like that totally ties into what you're saying. Like when you're gifted with this beautiful, like this gift that God has given you in His Son and in everlasting life through faith. Like
You should be diligent in the way that you spread that.
exactly, and you should be courageous in like God is with you at all times. Like
And yet you need to be humble as well. You don't want to say, you know, like, I told you this, okay, don't forget that, you know.
Exactly. You want to acknowledge that what you know is not from yourself, is from the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, I wanted to ask you a question because I think it's kind of interesting how humility as a virtue has almost, I feel like it's kind of changed a little bit. And like the importance, at least for like from a biblical perspective, if you're a Christian, I feel like that courage looks differently from like first century church or whatever. Like a lot of the disciples, like after Jesus died and stuff, they continued preaching, and they were courageous about their teaching to the point where it killed them. Like a lot of these guys got martyred. Like Peter, he got like crucified upside down. I mean, I feel like that's a different level of courage that maybe in certain areas of the world, like that documentary we were watching of like people that are getting like attacked and thrown in prison and persecuted for their faith.
100% of Somali Christians killed.
Yeah, that's a gnarly level of courage. But I mean, I feel like at least for us, we don't deal with that level of persecution. I feel like our courage is a little different. Like we have to have like courage in social circles or like the way that we view other people that aren't necessarily Christians and trying to spread the gospel, spread the word of Christ to non-believers. I feel like that takes courage, but that kind of courage isn't taken to like the level where you could like be killed for it, you know. I feel like that's a little bit of a different kind of a thing, which I mean, I guess it still exists because it exists in that documentary.
So what is exactly your question?
I'm just wondering how do you think those two different types of courages, do you think that there's like a relationship between them, or do you think those are two different like
I think it's just
things
a
almost?
different level of courage, you know, because courage isn't necessarily dying for something, but it's also not just like, well, you could have, you know, gotten in trouble for doing something, but you did it anyway. It's a general thing. It's doing the right thing even though there are risks to it. Like I have a couple good examples of
I
that.
like that.
One of which is just a general thing. It's not an exact like specific point, but firefighters in general, saving other people's lives.
Takes a lot of
even
courage.
though I mean they could lose their own lives doing that. It takes a ton of courage to do that.
Selfless.
Yeah, it's very selfless.
Yeah, well, that's exceptional. I think these virtues tied in well together, and being able to add Justin to the group, I feel like definitely added to the conversation and the overall depth that we were able to get into.
For sure.
I feel like we should do this again. This is kind of fun. Like
Yeah.
coming back for like a part 2 or something like that. It'd be pretty sweet. I mean, anyway, I think we've pretty much covered it. I think we've.
I have one more question as our time is winding down here.
Yeah. I'll hit us with a little wrap up after you're good.
Well, with like social media today, how can we express these virtues in like a Christian viewpoint? Because I have one point with like humility, going all the way back to the point I've made several times. It's not thinking of like oneself as less; it's thinking about oneself less. How can we still like enjoy the act of posting and sharing our life without oversharing
almost?
No, like overestimating our worth. Like when we go and we check our likes and like I got 100 likes on this post. I got 100 likes on this TikTok. How can we still like remain steadfast in what we truly are as a child of God, rather than like someone above that? Like, and how can like people in general work on that better, as we have a big problem with like under valuing ourselves?
I mean,
Yeah, you go.
I mean, something I do generally is just like I'll have Instagram or TikTok downloaded for like a week or so, sometimes less, just to check things, see what people have posted, maybe post something because I've been doing something recently. But I don't really put a whole lot of time into it, and then I'll delete it afterwards because I scrolling specifically is super addicting, and it just keeps you on the app, even if we're not talking about scrolling specifically, but like focusing on social media, deleting it, and just like taking a little tolerance break. Yeah, just a little break from social media can be really good for you.
I think when you brought up that point, I remember we had a little article that we read. I think I went through it with Josh, and we just had like a little class period to go through and read and annotate and kind of work through it and stuff. And it was actually on humility, and it was, I feel like it ties into like what you were saying, because it's like, I don't feel like you should be bringing down your accomplishments. Like, I feel like when you kind of bring that up, it's like certain accomplishments in your life, like whether or not, like maybe if you wanted to go play college sports or whatever, and you get like a committed like post or something like that. I don't feel like you need to hide that necessarily.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like you should still be like, your accomplishments are still worth noting, And I still feel like they're worth like proclaiming out there and stuff. But I think you should be. It was something specific from it. It was like, it was talking about like if you found 100%, if you found the cure to cancer and you were a doctor and you contributed 25% of the cure, and then one of your buddy doctors contributed 75% of the cure, you should be happy for your 25%, and then you should be like 3 times as happy for like your neighbor that was able to contribute that much more.
I've seen that quote before.
Yeah, and it was like, and I feel like it's important to be like honoring your own like accomplishments and what you've like contributed and what you've done, or your accomplishments. I feel like those are important too, but I don't think you should get self-absorbed in the things that you've like accomplished in your life. And I feel like you should be just as quick to like commend others, or maybe if that's like Instagram, like repost somebody else's story that much more when somebody else accomplishes something, So I think it's just, I think the idea of being sober-minded about your own accomplishments and not thinking of it above other people's is the biggest point for me, at least when it comes to social media. And I know I need to be more diligent about the use of my social media.
I think what I'm getting from you is like, it's like a balloon. You don't want it overinflated and you don't want it underinflated.
Yeah.
You don't want it to be prideful, but you don't want to be like
almost like fake,
nihilist in
Yeah,
a way.
like fake pride or like trying to talk yourself down or something, or like
Yeah.
a self-pity, you know? 'Cause
Yeah,
God's
yeah.
still giving you
Self-pity,
gifts
right.
and God's still giving you like
Yeah, you should
things in your life. Like if he gave you a gift to play football in college or gift to play basketball in college,
Right.
Yeah.
like that's something God gave you. That's something that God wants for your life. So it should be something that's praised, you know?
Yeah.
But I think letting it consume you and then not paying attention to other people's lives is where humility is important to
Yeah.
bring into the
Yeah.
equation. You know?
There's definitely the importance of like glorifying God through your accomplishments, as like nothing on earth is possible throughout him or without him, sorry. And all is possible throughout him. So yeah, I think that about summarizes that conversation though. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. I mean,
Yeah.
this has been a great podcast. Thank you guys for coming on and listening to Vanar's virtuous voice. I'm going to go ahead and cut it there, but thank you guys for coming and supporting the
my pleasure.
podcast that
Yeah,
I
for sure,
now
bro.
own for whatever reason.
Yep.
This episode has been a production of the Capistrano Valley Christian Schools Podcast Network. Capistrano Valley Christian Schools is a Christian JK through 12 school in San Juan Capistrano, California. Be sure to check out, subscribe to, and leave a review of this show and the other shows on our network on your podcast player of choice. Doing so supports the school community in a multitude of ways. For more information about the CVCS Podcast Network or any of our other shows, check out cvcs.org or email podcasts@cvcs.org. On behalf of the whole network, this is Mr. Jasper saying thank you again for listening and stay tuned for more.